All right, so we were talking about relationships earlier and healing from certain, traumatic experiences and relationships. And you had mentioned something that your family went through.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to talk about how when, trauma happens to something as what happened to your son, how it affects the individual,
Yeah.
but also how it affects the household, the family as a whole. So why don't you kind of fill the viewers in on that and your perspective of how that went and maybe how they can also, deal with it if they ever come about a situation like that. And the reason I'm saying it is because right now there's been a lot of recent attacks specifically in the Asian community.
Absolutely.
And the hashtag, stop Asian hate and things like that. And so, maybe the guy was on drugs and that wasn't his aim, but healing from a random attack like that, I'm guessing, you know what I mean, in that situation is something that people are going to be able to relate to right now because it really is something that's actively happening in our community right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was so crazy because when I got the phone call from my oldest son and he said, we were attacked and it was a guy who used a metal pipe and he looked like he was on drugs. And, the police took a report and they were able to go back to the scene and was able to pick the guy up and arrest him.
And did your son say, did he come up and engage in a conversation? Was there, what happened?
Yeah, so it was my son pulling into the parking lot of the high school, and my oldest son was driving, and then my youngest son, he was standing there waiting. And they saw the guy kind of walking, charging towards my youngest. And they were like, oh, is that his friend? Coming up to him, and they were like, my two younger kids in the car were like, he doesn't look familiar. I don't think that's one of his friends. So track and field practice was held in the very back of the high school. So nobody else was in the front except my kids. So then they saw the guy pull out from behind his back the metal pipe. And that's when everybody started panicking. So my son accelerated the car, pulled up, and at this point, my oldest jumped out of the car, pushed my youngest aside, and then ended up getting the pipe to him. So he held up his wrist, and he was just kind of blocking, and then he managed to grab the guy's hands and pull it down. And he was just like, "What are you doing?" And of course, my son in his he's kind of got that spiritual streak. He's like, this is not you. You look like you're overcome by something. My son can tell he was under the influence of something else. He was just gone, right? And so the guy just headbutted him, broke his glasses, fractured his nose. And so then my son was able to just kind of got up after he got knocked to the ground. He got up, jumped into the car, and they drove off to the nearest gas station and called the police. And when the police got there, they were just like, oh my God, these are the nicest, sweetest kids. Why would anybody attack them, right?
Well, that's the thing is, regardless if this guy was under the influence, you don't have a pipe hidden behind your back. If you weren't planning on using it and you're just fixing a truck or fixing a sink, you just walk with it. So you have a hidden weapon, a concealed weapon.
Yes.
You pull it out as you're walking directly towards somebody.
Yes.
That's premeditated.
It is premeditated.
Oh, I was high and I didn't know what I was doing. Yes, you did.
Right. So I literally was at work when this happened. So I called my whole family. I didn't know what else to do. I was called my family.
Rally
that was my
troops.
first instinct.
Right.
Yeah, it was my instincts. I called my sisters, my brothers, my parents, and then they were like, then by the time I got home, my kids were shaken up. My daughter was crying. My youngest son, who was in track and field, he just kind of went to his room and he just wanted to be left alone. He just needed time to himself. And my oldest was just putting ice on his nose, and he was just he's looking for bandages to kind of stitch it up, because the police asked, do you want to go to the hospital? And they all declined. It's we just want to go home. We just want to go home.
They were done dealing with it.
Yeah,
they needed to have their own space.
Yeah, they wanted to go home where it felt safe.
Comfortable, yeah.
Right? They wanted to retreat to some place where they felt safe. And so when I got home, my sister, all my family members live an hour away
Mhm.
at least, and my brother lived in the East Coast. And they called and they said, hey, it was an Asian guy that attacked your kids.
Interesting.
And then I was like, what? And they're like, it's an Asian guy.
Were they thinking it was race related?
Yeah,
Originally?
evidently the guy did make a few racial slurs. He did make a few racial slurs. And I literally was dumbfounded, and I looked at my kids. I was like, why didn't you guys mention it was an Asian guy? And then my kids looked at me like, why does that matter, Mom? We were attacked, period. It doesn't matter who it was.
Right.
Right? So I was just like, at that moment, guys, I was like, damn, I'm so proud of my kids. I am, these are good human beings. Like, they made no reference to what nationality, what race this other human being was that attacked them.
Right.
And so I was just, in that moment, I was just like, you know, hugging my kids and crying. And I was just like, I love you guys so much. I'm just so proud of you.
Aww.
Yeah. Then after that, I think, you know, I asked my kids, it's like, do you guys want to go to the hospital? And they were like, no, we're fine. And actually, after a couple hours, my kids were able to kind of like be light of it. They felt good being home. You know, a couple of my family members were calling and FaceTiming, and pretty much was just kind of giving them support over the phone and the best that they can, because everybody was so far away. And my sister, who was living in Palm Springs, drove all the way up here. And so everybody wanted to just kind of like release it slowly, but just be home where they just felt safe.
And did they have the opportunity to talk about it amongst each other?
Yes, they did. They all talked about it. And you know, and even my oldest was cracking jokes. He was just all talking about how he was like, I just got those glasses, they're new and I love them, you know. And he was just like, damn it. And then he was like, he was just like, you know, when the glasses got knocked off my face and I looked at it, I'm like, my glasses. He's like, fuck it, I gotta go.
Right. They're trying to see. I think sometimes that's how people deal with trauma, right? You're trying to see in real time, like the things that were going on in your head, like behind the scenes, but it comes off as this comedy, and I think that's how a lot of people are able to heal from it.
Yes. And so that's how my kids were, and I, you know, acknowledged that, you know, a lot of the energy was exchanged and it was just pulled everywhere. And so when you feel exhausted, when you feel depleted, what you have to do is you got to call back your energy. And this is after any exchange with anyone, whether it be a girlfriend, a relative, you know, a significant other, a romantic partner, whoever the energy exchange was with that is heavy, that is traumatic. You are, you know, and even the police officers that were there at the scene, they also engaged in the talking and taking the report and taking the information. So you have to pull your energy back from the police officers, you know, because the police officers, they're going to go home after their experiences, and firefighters, or, you know, these first responders, doctors, nurses, you know, these people, they are engaged with that victim. And so they often are times their heart goes out, right? Because it wasn't until I didn't realize this until the next day when the detective called. And get this is the craziest thing. 11 years ago, when the incident happened with my ex-husband and the police officers and the detectives that showed up on the scene at the hospital, guess who was the first to call me with response to what happened to my kids?
Was it the same detective?
The same detective from
wow.
11 years ago.
Wow.
Right? And she was just like,
oh, is it she?
Yeah, it was a she.
She recognized the names?
She recognized the names, and she was like, you're kidding me right now. Are you kidding me right now?
So they do have that, yeah.
Yeah, so then they were like, she called me very first thing the next morning when she was able to review the case, and she just said, you know, these police officers that were on the scene, they were literally so heartbroken because they just looked at your kids and they're just like, why are these kids going through the same thing? You know, so traumatic. And it's just like, and energetically, you know, I was working under a psychic mentor at the time, and I asked her, I was just kind of talking through this with her, and And she was also helping me doing a lot of energy work where I was able to help channel healing energy to my children.
Right, because
You know,
you're the protector.
Yes,
you're the
I'm the
provider.
protector.
You wanna
So
feel that way,
she, during the midst of my training of her teaching me how to do Reiki, we also do distance Reiki healing.
Mm-hmm.
So you are able to channel your energy healing across, across states.
Sometimes there's even YouTube channels where people will do it through the channel.
Exactly.
Right. So you
Through
just-
the phone.
Mhm.
I've done tarot card readings over the phone with customers and clients. And so at that point, we were in a space where we were creating, a kind of like a crystal grid and just kind of like projecting and amplifying the healing energy to my kids, because at that time, it wasn't something familiar for them to meditate or
Right.
like pull their energy
They're like, we
back.
already talked about this, Mom. And we
Yeah,
wanna move on."
exactly,
Right.
exactly. So they were not open to that type of healing at that time because it was kind of new to them and they were younger, and so I, me and
You
my
did it for
mentor
them.
did it for them. So, not heal for them, but kind of like channel that healing energy, that protective energy, releasing the anxiety, and also, of course, by talking to them and loving them and assuring them. And even the detectives offered escorts, like police escort to and from school.
Very
And so the resources were available for them, and it was a community effort, to say the least, right? Friends, family, and the police department.
It takes a village.
It does take a village.
Yeah.
So I was grateful. I was grateful for the support in all different aspects of their life.
Okay.
Yeah.